All right, it's Monday, November 25th. I'm headed into the office. I didn't do a video this morning coming from CrossFit. I was trying to get home pretty quick and just not focused on it. Looks like I gotta get gas too. So that's the only editing you get from me, is me trimming out on YouTube when I gotta get gas. But we got a topic for today. We're gonna be talking about burnout, and I'm going to be going over this because I did a video recently on burnout. I can never remember if this is on like my main channel or on Code Commute. So the comment I got was like, hey, like, thanks, like, this is helpful, but like, could we get a different perspective on this? Actually, I think this was on my main channel. So the question was really about like, cool, we see it from the perspective of the software engineer experiencing burnout as an individual going through it, but like, what about from the perspective of like a manager or a leader kind of trying to help with this kind of thing? So I figured I'd talk about that. I don't know if I have a full drive in me for it, but we'll see. We'll come up with something. And a friendly reminder too to folks, like a couple things, right? So one, if you want me to talk through stuff, just say it in the comments. Let me know if you have scenarios you want me to chat through. If you have stuff that's like a little bit more involved and like you want to do it anonymously, just message me on social media. I'm on every platform I can possibly be on. So just send me a message. The more detail you give, the more context I have to respond to it. So happy to try and do that. And what was the other thing? For this topic in particular, if you're like, well, I'm not a manager, see you later. No, don't run away so fast. Plus, don't you want to hang out with me? But no, seriously, I think the framing with this kind of stuff is, I like to think, very helpful for individual contributors, because if you find that you're not able to have conversations with your manager about this kind of stuff, like, number one, like, that's a really important thing to realize, is that if you cannot do it, you should think about trying to improve your working relationship with your manager. If you're like, well, that's never going to happen, my manager would never talk about this stuff, or I couldn't approach them, blah, blah. Like, if you think this kind of stuff's important, maybe it's time for a different manager. I think there's plenty of awesome managers out there that will take the time of day to talk to you about this kind of stuff. They want to support you. It's not a red flag where they're like, oh, looks like Joey's about to reach burnout, time to get rid of him so we can get Joey number 2. No, like, there's good managers that will try to look out for you, help prevent it when you are going through it, work with you on it. So I want you to hear this kind of stuff, because if you're, again, thinking like, doesn't apply to me and I could never talk to my manager about it, yeah, like, just a reminder, yeah, you can, it just might be time for a different manager. So, okay, that's the preamble out of the way. I think there's a couple things when it comes to burnout from my perspective as a manager. So we're not talking about me as a manager going through burnout and the other stuff I'm doing. We're talking about me as a manager, or you as a manager, and how to look out for your team on this stuff. So the first thing, I mean, there's a couple things we should mention here. There's like prevention, and then there's, sorry, this turn is pretty nasty. There's prevention, and then there's like helping people navigate it, right? So, oh my God. It's going to be a bad drive today. So we can talk through prevention. We can talk about, okay, like, people are experiencing it, what should we do? And I'll probably start with prevention, I guess. And like all things that I try to approach in management, a lot of that is based on forming relationships with the people that I'm managing. So I want to make sure that when I'm managing a team, that people feel like they can really trust me. I think that that's critical, because if I don't have trust and I don't have respect with my team, then it's going to be way more challenging to have effective conversations about how I can help them the best. Right? So, like, I mean, if you're like, that sounds like kind of woo-woo, wishy-washy, I mean, like, think about it though, right? Like, if I'm trying to explain that as a manager, I want to be able to support my team as much as possible, I think it's a good trait for managers, good set of actions to try and take care of. And if you feel like you can't talk to your manager about important things, right? Like that you're having challenges or that you want certain opportunities or whatever it happens to be. If you feel like those conversations are basically impossible, like that's what I'm getting at, right? Like if you have a good working relationship with your manager, so there's a lot of trust and you respect them, then you're willing to go have, or at least more willing to have these conversations. I'm not saying it makes it easy, but certainly it makes it easier. It's not easy to do if you're like, well, I don't like my manager, I don't trust what they have to say, I don't really respect them. Like, why am I going to tell them that I'm experiencing burnout? Why am I going to tell them that these are my career interests? Like, what are they going to do about it, right? That's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I want to make sure that my team can approach me about literally anything. That's like a foundation. So that might sound like it's kind of generic, redundant, like, sure, okay, that's a general manager thing, but I want to set the tone for that because I think without that foundation, when we start saying, oh, well, how do we prevent burnout? Like, it's almost like you can't, it's not that you can't, it's really difficult to start doing any of these other things if you don't have that foundation in place. So that's why I like to emphasize it. So again, if you're a manager, like, try spending time with your team on this stuff, making sure that you are building up that relationship, listen to them, right? Give them an opportunity to speak. It's not just about assigning them work and trying to rush them through it. Make sure that they know that you care. Maybe you do care and you're not expressing it well, right? Like, make sure they know that you care. And then if you're not a manager and you're an individual contributor, try to work with your manager on these types of things. And if you feel like your manager's not shifting to like be open to have conversations like this, again, if this is something you really value, it might be time. Okay, gas stations right there. So I'm going to start this next point. Now, I'm going to start bring up one-on-ones for this kind of thing. So I've talked about this before. And it's like not like it's new knowledge or something, but one-on-ones being used purely for status updates is like a little bit, I don't want to say a waste, but like I feel like if that's the only thing that you ever use them for, like there's some missed opportunity, I guess, is what I would say. Because as a manager, like, yeah, like it can be helpful if I hear a status update, but like we have other meetings for that. Or if I really need to know and we've been chatting before and I'm like, hey, it's been a little bit, a couple days, a week since we last talked about that project. Like, I could reach out to you if I really needed to know. So when people use their entire one-on-one time every time to go through status updates, like I need to interject and say like, hey, we should talk about something else or find ways to segue into other things. Oh, is this guy gonna pull out? Do you want to come, buddy? There you go. Sorry, I gotta wait for this guy to back out. So yeah, if you're using it every time just for status updates, not great. But I do, I get a pulse on things from status updates, and I'm gonna clip this part out because I'm getting gas. With respect to getting status updates on things, again, one-on-ones are one such place to do it, but like team meetings as well. Point is, I get some type of pulse for how things are going, right? But it's good for me in one-on-ones to dig into things a little bit more, and it's not, hey, Jimmy, Joey, Sally, whoever. It's not, hey, like, what's the update? Like, tell me how much, what's the ETA, right? Like, tell me the productivity you have on this. Like, how can I get more out of you in terms of like just finishing fast, right? That's not the goal. But I can leverage one-on-ones to be able to dig in a little bit and ask questions about how things are going for the individual. So you might be talking about similar things, framing questions to start off in a similar way, right? Getting people to talk through how things are going, but the focus is entirely different. The focus is not like, what is the health of this project? Like, I should already know that as an engineering manager. I shouldn't be in a one-on-one like getting surprises on project stuff, because if that's where I'm getting my updates on surprises, like there's probably some inefficiencies there. So leveraging one-on-ones to be able to dig in and be like, oh man, it says the drive is like ridiculously backed up. There's an extra 20 minutes of traffic like right here. Okay, as long as if it's right where the fast lane starts, I might be okay. I can see it around this bend already backing up. Oh my god. Okay, so you're stuck with me for longer. Again, we're using the status updates to dig in. Oh my god. Woo! This part of the highway, I've been living here for a few years now. That part of the highway I just drove through, anytime there's like a decent amount of rain, I can guarantee there's an accident there. There wasn't one, so maybe that was almost my turn. The road doesn't drain there at all, so it's pretty awful. Good thing I'm aware that that spot's pretty crappy. So the status updates, I keep starting this part off and not getting into it. We're digging into how the individual is feeling about what's going on. And this is going back to like the trust, respect thing. I need people to be open and honest with me, right? So, hey, you're working on this project, like how's it going? People will always go into like trying to give you the progress update in terms of like, you know, here's the ETA, here's where we're blocked and stuff. Then it's like, okay, like, no, but like, are you still finding this work? Like, is it challenging? Or like, is it challenging and that's why it's taking some extra time in certain places, like you're learning? Or is it, you know, it's challenging because you're blocked on people and like that's not been a good experience? So like, you know, you're interested in the technology or you're interested in what you're trying to solve for here, but like you're constantly blocked by other people and like that's really starting to take a toll on you. So I start prodding about these things so that I can understand like what's this experience like for this individual, right? Because everyone is going to be different. There's going to be some people where based on what gets them, I mean, there's a lot of similarities, don't get me wrong, like people don't enjoy being blocked, like I get it, but some things are more engaging or exciting for some people, and some things are like a bigger drain for individuals and for other people. So it's really important to understand these things and try to lean into them. So I want to kind of maybe make up a couple examples here and we'll talk through them, but I do have a real one that I want to like share in some capacity. So, you know, you could have someone who is motivated by some type of career progression, right? Where it's like, hey, this is a project that's really good because it's cross team, so like you'll get to try this out, and they're like, awesome, like that's exciting, you know, I've been wanting a project like this, and but now they're working on it and they're like, this project space, like the technology, just like super boring. I actually think I had someone that was an early in career mentee that was kind of like this actually. I think the scenario was something like, hey, like big project for you. I know we're trying to line something up for promotion. By the way, I hate doing that kind of stuff. Like, do this project get promoted? Tying like a single project to stuff like that is pretty gross. Especially because we don't get the final say. So what, you're going to promise someone they finish it and then you get rejected when you put them up for promotion? Not a good spot. Anyway, they were like, cool, like awesome, this is good. And then they were telling me in one-on-ones that essentially they were like, I'm looking at this project and it's like a slog. They're like, this is, you know, the most boring thing I've ever seen. It was so uninteresting for them. They were like, but they were like losing motivation like crazy. So very interesting that they were so excited for such an opportunity, and then the motivation was totally gone. I can't recall what the exact details were, but truly the tech space, they were just like, this is so awful, like I don't want to be doing this. From like it was boring kind of thing, like they couldn't get excited about it, and then they couldn't put energy into it, which is dangerous, because now this is the project setting them up for promotion, and they can't get into it. So it wasn't like, because this was a mentee of mine, I don't have the direct influence with this individual on this project, right? So I don't want to claim like it was my input that turned it around for them. Like, that's totally unfair for me to say. I would like to assume they leveraged our conversations and talked with their manager and kind of got things resolved. But I think they were able to kind of go back to look at things a different way and say like, hey, look, like if this is for promotion, like that is the part that's exciting for me. And like, okay, how can I start getting interested in some of the conversations I have to have with other people on this stuff? Like, yeah, I know they're basically following a spec for something, and I think that's what was really getting them down. Like, it was just too much of like no creativity kind of thing. And so it was more about like, I think in the end for them, calling out these opportunities specifically, like, hey, look, like there is a design dog. Hey, look, you get to collaborate with these other people. Hey, look, like here's all these things that you get to try out that are kind of new for you that you get to practice. So yeah, like maybe on the tech side, this particular project, not as exciting as before, right? A little bit more prescribed, but look at all these other things. And I think for them, that actually like clicked for them, and they were like, cool, okay, you know what? There's some other stuff like on the side that like that can get my creativity going and stuff, but like this is a good opportunity for me to focus on these other things. So I think they could flip that around a little bit. Otherwise, because this is a talk about burnout, like what do you think would happen to this individual going through this project? Depending how long it is, they're probably going to start to feel burnt out, because they're like, I'm just working on this thing that I don't enjoy, and I know I have to get it done, and it's the entire thing along the way is just like, I don't want to be here. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be projects and there's going to be things, there's going to be work streams and stuff that aren't exciting. Like, it's basically virtually impossible for me as a manager, and I wouldn't expect this of any other manager, to like guarantee that every bit of work is going to be exciting for every individual. Sometimes, can I swear on YouTube? I don't know. We just got to get shit done, right? Like, sometimes we just got to do it. Now, we want to minimize that. That's another part of the burnout conversations. We want to minimize the, hey, look, we got to get shit done. But it is going to come up time to time. So that's, one example. Another example I want to talk through is actually related to a real one that I was working with an employee on. And it's kind of similar, actually. So now with this individual, and if they're ever watching this or listening to this, I think they could probably vouch for me in saying, I don't promise promotions with projects. What I do is I talk about how projects call out different either characteristics, traits, or opportunities to practice that contribute towards promotion. There is a difference. Oh, there's another AMG GT. It's black. We got to get up to it. Camera's the wrong way though. And I'm stuck in traffic. What if he gets away? Come on. I'm too distracted. I can't talk about burnout stuff now. There's another car. Okay, they're escaping. So with this individual, it was about a large project, and what was cool about it was that it had a lot of surface area. So it wasn't like, hey, go build this new feature that's like a complex feature. It was like, this project has a huge surface area. Can I turn this camera? Nice. Cool, we made a friend. Okay, anyway, back to reality. So the idea was that in terms of having exposure across our set of services, let's say, for just lack of a better word. I don't want to get into the details. This kind of project would actually be really good for them because there was a lot of focus prior to that in a very narrow area. And they had done well in that narrow area, but one of the problems was from a growth perspective, it was so narrow that it was making it difficult to have like different experiences across the team, especially for things like on-call shifts and just like for their level. Like it would be really important for them to have more broad understanding of what's going on. So for this individual, it was like, hey, this would be a good project for these reasons. Like we're talking about promotion and progression. Like here's a lot of areas. When I say that you need to improve on, I don't mean like, hey, you're bad at these. I mean like these are opportunities for growth that we really should be focused on. So it's a great project for it. Now, this person was working on this project and they're doing a good job. Kind of a challenging start, not their fault or anything. It's a big project. So they're working through it and get through some of the, the speed bumps in the beginning, and then they're doing pretty good. And after a few, because it's a really big project, right? It's long. So after some months go by, and they're working on this still, I remember being like, hey, like how are things going? And I think what was cool was you could tell like they were feeling like I'm getting the momentum. Right? Like, so now it's not just like I'm hitting a wall because this project sucks and it's really difficult and it's big. It was like, hey, like, no, like things are actually kind of moving here. Like, this is kind of cool. So good news, right? And I give them this opportunity as well to remind them, like, I'm observing this kind of thing as well. So like we get some good positive feedback on that, kind of keep the momentum going. Okay, a little bit more time goes by. How are things going? Okay, like now we're kind of back to a steady state, right? They're making progress. Everything from a delivery perspective looks good, but now it's less exciting, right? Because they've been on this thing for months now. It's a lot of the same thing over and over, and they know that they're making progress, but it's like it's not like they still got work to do, right? And it's a lot of the same thing. So that's the other thing that was worth calling out, is like it's a big project, but it's a big surface area, but a lot of the same thing. So you can imagine that from the technology side of things, in the beginning, interesting because it's new. And then after some time, you're like, okay, I've seen the pattern a lot. Okay, so now we've kind of reached a steady state. Now, as the project is reaching completion, I remember it's like, yeah, okay, having conversations. Like, yeah, I'm doing good, project's going good, but like, yeah, like it is kind of like, it's kind of dragging on me a little bit, right? And I get it, because it's a really long project. So I was trying to motivate them throughout it to be like, hey, look, like you are doing good. We can literally see the progression in terms of focus on things like where I have evidence for, things like promotion criteria and stuff like that. So a lot of good stuff coming out of this. I try to let them know that I'm observing these things, but they're reaching the end and it's like, man, yeah, like now it's starting to be a little challenging for them, because how do you maintain motivation for that long? Now here's the kicker. I had the same project essentially the same project come up on the second team that I was managing. And I remember saying like, look, you've done such an awesome job on this one. I know this has been a long time for you, right? Like, I get it. But I said, I have this basically the exact same project that needs to be taken care of over here. And I said, I know in the beginning of this one, you had a lot of input from teammates that were more senior, more experienced, more tenure to help guide you. I said, but now look how much you've achieved, right? I said, are you interested in leading this project for this other team? And they said yes. Because I think for them, they were, and like that was, it wasn't like, like, by the way, now you have to go do this, right? It was like, it was an option. I didn't try to like say, hey, look, like you have to go do it to get your promotion. truly, like, here is an option. I'm giving you an out. And by the way, I didn't make it very clear. Along the way, I had been saying to this individual, please let me know if you're feeling burnt out from this, if it's feeling like it's becoming too much of a grind, let me know, because we can always try to help bring someone else in and give you more of an opportunity to step back from it. So they had an out the whole way, and when I proposed this new phase of it, they still had an out, right? And you could say, well, Nick, how do you know that they felt like they had an out? Like maybe they felt pressured. I'm pretty confident, and it's going to be really difficult to challenge me on YouTube comments about it, so you can believe me or not, up to you. But I'm pretty confident they felt like, this is an option for them. So just a heads up. I understand you can believe whatever you want to about this. I'm just a dude in a car talking about software engineering. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. But what was cool about this was I set him up so that, like I said, he could lead the project. He was leading it already on my primary team, but I set him up to lead it on the other team. And that meant, I said, hey, like, by the way, you don't have to go doing all the work yourself, because I can actually set you up with some other of the software engineers. And now you can maybe walk them through a couple of examples and then truly coordinate the whole thing. So that means that you can step back from being hands in the code on this one, and we can get you some other work lined up. And that way you can truly try to coordinate, lead it, guide the other people. So this is a bit of an evolution of the project itself, by the way. And in terms of career advancement, like now, you're going to be doing a lot more mentoring, guiding, project management, not just like you're getting through the slog of work. So I think some of those things made it appealing for him to jump into. So if you're listening to that and you're going, well, Nick, what the hell does that have to do with burnout? I wanted to talk through that project so that you could see, like, my strategy with doing that was like, I really try to find work that's aligned, obviously, with business value, because we're working. But I want to make sure that people feel like what they're doing is not only impactful for the business, but is aligned with their interests, their growth opportunities. They're challenged by it, not so challenging that they can't get anything done, but they're challenged by it. They're learning. I already said learning. So basically they have something that's going to keep them engaged. So has value and keeps them engaged. That's what I'm trying to do all the time when setting up work, as much as possible, right? So with this project, it was like, cool. I explained how going on for a long period of time is going to set someone up for probably being burnt out from it. But I made sure that I kept tabs with them, not just on the project status, but with them. And fortunately, I feel like this individual really trusts and respects me, that he could be open and honest. It wasn't like, oh, I better not tell Nick that, like, I'm feeling like crap on this project because it's been months and months. It's like, no, like, he could say to me, yeah, like, this is getting to be a bit of a slog now. Like, yeah, it is. And not be worried that I'm going to be like, oh, well, I guess you're not capable of it. Like, it's not the conversation, right? So keeping tabs on individuals throughout the project, giving them an opportunity. So this is maybe something I'll call out more specifically, because I did talk about it, but I think it's important to give people an opportunity out. And I'll explain this a little bit, because you might be saying, well, that seems like it's really ineffective. Like, now you're going to have to onboard someone else to lead a project or whatever. And like, that's time lost. And so yes and no, right? A couple things to think about. One is maybe in this situation, maybe I could let this person step back from being so hands-on, and I could take a little bit longer of a time to onboard someone else, and they could co-lead it. or start by co-leading and then phase out the first person to say, hey, thanks for all of your awesome work. It's actually a really good opportunity for someone else to come take this, right? So we can find these opportunities and make it happen and be positive for both individuals. Sorry, just checking the highway, says a lot of traffic, but so that's one thing. I said co-lead. I lost my train of thought there. It doesn't have to be co-lead. Like if I needed to pull the ripcord, it would be like, cool, how do I transition someone out, right? I would hope, and it's not like their fault or anything, but I would hope that I could do a better job to catch that kind of thing sooner, right? So in my opinion, if I wasn't doing my job well, wasn't doing a good job like keeping tabs on things, it could reach a point where someone's like, Nick, like, I got nothing in me, like, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, we gotta get you out of this. So back to like, well, isn't that a waste kind of thing? Like, well, think about it this way. What's a bigger waste? If I have someone who's on a project, a big important project that they're leading, and now they've run completely out of steam. They're done, right? If you've never experienced burnout before, you might be kind of like, well, I don't get it. Like, why don't you just work harder? Like, yeah. But like, it reaches a point where you're like, it feels like depression, right? And I don't mean to minimize depression for people that have experienced depression, but I mean, there's a lot of similar characteristics where like, there is no motivation. When you're depressed, it can be ridiculously hard to do the most simple things. It can feel like, I can't even brush my teeth, I can't even shower when you're depressed, right? And you can have similar things happen when you're burnt out. It's different for everyone, right? But you could be like, a lot of the things you'll see like are related to work, right? But you can't focus. You're procrastinating because you're just like, I don't care. I don't have the motivation. So if you think about it, like what's more impact in a negative way? Me taking the time to onboard a new lead to a project, or me basically burning someone out until they're right in the ground, the project is grinding to a halt near the finish line, and then that person's screwed because now they're going to have to take time recovering from burnout. If it's not obvious, the latter, recovering from burnout and grinding that project to a halt, is going to be significantly worse. So I will, as much as possible, try to opt to swap people out as necessary, and then try to create and turn that into an opportunity for multiple people. You gonna let me in? No? This guy will. Thank you so much, sir or madam. Okay, so can't remember what I was talking about before that though. So making sure that people can be swapped is important. It might feel like a bit of a slowdown, but like I think it's a smart move. And the other thing that's probably a generalization from that story that I think is important is like is truly like trying to find opportunities along the way, right? So kind of similar to the first story I told with the early in career mentee. If you can find ways to re-excite someone about something, that can be helpful. It's hard. It's certainly not trivial, but like if you can, then that can be helpful. You might get a little bit more oomph out of them. They might say, okay, like I can see why that's actually kind of cool. Like give them something else to focus on, even though the work is very similar. Okay, so that's some ideas about burnout prevention, but we started to kind of get into like the burnout recovery, if I can call it that. So I feel like it's a bit of a spectrum, right? So when we talk about burnout, like, I think at all points in time we're on like some amount of, like, a spectrum of some amount of burnout. And once it reaches some critical point, that's where, like, exponentially takes off in terms of negative impact. So we want to make sure that people aren't hitting that part, and I feel like it's easier to sort of recover from your capacity, like with respect to burnout, when it's earlier. I don't know if I'm doing a good job. If I could draw a picture for you right now, it'd probably be easier, even though my pictures are terrible. But the further along burnout gets, the harder it is to recover from, maybe, is the way that I would put it. So keeping a good balance early on is critical. But someone, let's say they reach burnout. They've reached this point where they're like, I'm screwed. Now, this can be interesting because, let me just merge here. There are situations, especially as a manager, where someone on your team might be burnt out, and it has nothing to do with your time working with them. Interesting thought. How is that possible? Well, if they are new to the team, right? If they're new to the team and they've already reached a point of burnout, now they're in a burnout state. They've been brought onto the team. Now you need to work with them to get them out of burnout. There could be stuff that gets people burnt out from outside of work, just as a heads up, right? It could be that there's so much going on in their life that it's now starting to take a toll on them at work. So it's almost like their capacity to be able to focus on things and find, like, enjoy, like, I don't even know if it's enjoyment, maybe that's the wrong word, but their overall capacity is just like at the tipping point, and then a little bit more comes up at work, and now they're like, I'm checked out, like, I'm done. So it's not necessarily like the examples I gave earlier, just as a heads up. It's not, oh, you're on this project that I gave you, like, so sometimes it's not obvious. So we want to prevent it. I think I talked earlier on about trying to have conversations with people, setting yourself up so that you can have those conversations and detect it. But now someone's experiencing it. What do we do? Well, my strategy is to lean into the people side of things. And people might not agree with this, but if you're watching this, it's, I assume, because you're interested, at least in my opinion. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, which is fine. But I lean into the people side, and what I mean by that is, like, if people are absolutely burnt out and they need more time, as in, like, look, like, I can't focus at work. I can't get shit done. Even the most simple stuff. Where's that person coming from? Cool, take a day off. That's fine. Right? If you're not focusing at work, you're not going to be productive. That's okay, take a day off. Well, I don't have vacation days. I don't care, take a day off. Go relax, go do something. It's not going to get better. Like, first of all, you're not going to be much value, if any, if you're, especially like if people are remote. Like, I don't blame you. You're going to be checked out. You're already burnt out. You're going to be sitting at your computer. You're going to be checked out. Okay. Like, I don't want you just sitting at your computer with Outlook open, staring at it, or Visual Studio open, and you're like, I can't type anything because I can't even think. Just turn it off. Just turn it off. Go relax. Go back to bed. Go do something. Get your mind off this stuff, right? Again, you might say, well, that sounds ridiculous. Like, you can't keep teams going like that. It's the point. Like, my goal is not to keep a team going like that. I don't want my whole team being like, hey, Nick, I'm also burnt out. Like, can I just take the day off? No. The reason that this ends up working well, in my opinion, is that, like I said, foundation of trust and respect. I'm I have only ever had in my career so far, it's been like just over 12 years of managing people, I've only had a few people I feel like they're trying to take advantage of that. I say few, probably two. I think probably two people in my entire career have I been like, you know, I think you're trying to game the system here. And that means that an overwhelming majority of people are understanding that, like, I will give them that flexibility because I want them to be successful. I want them to do good work. I can't even turn here. How is this going to work? Sorry, you can't see the road, but basically the turn lane I'm in to turn right is completely backed up. So yeah, like, the point is that, like, I'm giving people that space where they can disconnect a little bit. They're already burnt out. They're not going to be doing much good at work because they're not working. So give them that space. I let them know, like, hey, like, I hear what you're saying. I hear you. Okay, let's talk about it. Like, that's work on me now to go make sure that if they're working on projects, like, how do I get these things back on track, right? How can I get them help so that their projects aren't screwed over? But I will give them that space. And I think, you know, it's weird because I understand on the surface it feels like that's not a good move for business, but I think it's necessary because it only gets worse. And then, so giving people space, number one, that also reminds them, like, hey, look, you came and talked to me about this, and guess what? You didn't get punished for it. Right? Because if someone were to be like, I'm burnt out and, like, you know, that's why it's been really hard. And then I go, oh, like, interesting. Well, maybe we should talk about, like, firing you, like, or whatever, laying you off, whatever it happens to be. Like, that's not good. I want people to be able to trust me to come talk to me about this stuff. I will go figure it out. That's my job. My job is to enable people to do their best work possible. So if you cannot do your best work possible because you're burnt out, take the day off. Now, one day off doesn't fix things. Okay, so sort of the last part as I pull into the office. One day off doesn't fix things. But what's important, again, is that now people go, oh, I could talk to Nick about this, and, like, and he didn't bite my head off for it, and he let me relax. Okay, so great. Okay, now they come back to the office. Okay, they're not going to be fully rejuvenated. It's one day and they're experiencing burnout. One day's not going to fix it. But what happens now? What happens now? So I basically work with them beyond that point. Oh man, that person parked like an absolute idiot. Oh, my other spot's taken. Oh, come on. So I work with them when they come back to try and understand. Something obviously went on for too long, or there's something else going on. Like, what did I miss? Where was my blind spot? I can't blame myself either. Sometimes a lot of it's out of my control. But how can I work with them to understand what they're experiencing and then make sure that I can give them opportunities to put them back on track? So for some people, they might say, look, I've been juggling all these work items for too long. Okay, great. Okay, let's get some of them wrapped up. You need me to work with you to hand them off to someone else, whatever that needs to look like. Like, let's talk about these things. And, like, that's my job now. That's okay. That's literally what my role is all about. So I think people get fearful of that because they're like, oh, now it's going to be a problem and, like, it's going to look bad on me. Like, no, if this kind of thing happens all of the time and you cannot manage your time properly and, like, it's because you were taking on all the work and, like, maybe a different story there. But if you're just going about your stuff and you're not, like, hoarding work items, trying to do a million things in parallel and then being surprised that you're burnt out, it's like it's a natural thing that will sneak up on people. So yeah, my strategy for working with people that are going through burnout is to give them space, to make sure that when they're feeling comfortable to talk about what they're experiencing, that I listen to that, and that we come up with a strategy together to make sure that we can address it. So sometimes that's like, hey, you need some extra time off? Cool, take it. That could be, hey, you got too many things going on, let's figure out how to split them up. Could be a million different options, but the point is that I need that awareness and I need to give people space. So hopefully you found that helpful, and I will see you on the drive home. Take care.